Isolation is not rejection. It is God's redirection toward a higher purpose. Many times in life, when we find ourselves alone, separated, or cut off from familiar surroundings and people, the first thought that creeps into our mind is that we've been rejected. We begin to think we've been forgotten, abandoned, or even punished. But what if isolation is not rejection at all? What if it is simply God's way of shifting us away from the noise and distractions, so He can redirect us into something greater than we can see? Think about it. Whenever God wants to do something extraordinary in your life, He often moves you out of your comfort zone first. That movement can feel uncomfortable, even painful, because it pulls you away from what you know. Friends may drift away, opportunities may close, doors you thought would open may remain shut. And in those moments, you might cry out, "Why me? Why now?" But isolation is not about what you are losing. It's about where you are being positioned. You are being repositioned for purpose, for growth, and for blessings that cannot be carried by the person you were yesterday. It's in isolation that you begin to discover strength you never realized you had. When the voices of others are silent, when the approval you once sought no longer surrounds you, you are forced to listen more intently to the whisper of God. That whisper, though soft, carries direction. It tells you you're not abandoned, you're being refined. You're not being cast aside, you're being set apart. There's a difference between rejection and redirection. Rejection pushes you out, but redirection leads you in to something new, something purposeful, something designed to align you with your destiny. Often, rejection is visible. Someone turns their back on you, a door closes, a plan falls apart. But redirection is invisible. It doesn't always look like movement. It doesn't always feel like progress. And yet it is the invisible hand of God guiding you into a place you could never have reached on your own. The stillness of isolation becomes the canvas where God paints clarity. Suddenly, the things that once seemed confusing start to make sense. You begin to realize that some people couldn't go where you're going. Some relationships couldn't carry the weight of where God is taking you. Some opportunities you thought were good were simply distractions in disguise. Isolation strips away the unnecessary, so you can carry only what is essential into your next season. If you've ever felt overlooked, remember this. Diamonds are not formed in crowds. They are formed in the deep, hidden places under pressure. Seeds don't grow in the spotlight. They grow underground, unseen, until the right moment comes. Just because no one sees your growth doesn't mean it isn't happening. Your hidden season of isolation is not rejection. It is incubation. God is incubating your future, developing your character, and preparing you for blessings that will not just meet your expectations, but exceed them. Sometimes God has to separate you so He can elevate you. Because if you remained in the same environment, surrounded by the same influences, you might never rise to the level He's calling you to. That's why separation is painful. It requires leaving behind familiar voices, comfortable places, and predictable routines. But every time God pulls you away, it is because He intends to push you forward. Think about an arrow. It has to be pulled back before it can be launched ahead. In the same way, your season of isolation may feel like a setback, but in reality, it's preparation for acceleration. And while isolation feels lonely, it is in that quiet place that God teaches you dependence. He reminds you that His approval is greater than human applause, that His plan is stronger than your disappointments, and that His purpose for your life is far beyond what rejection could ever take away. You are not forgotten. You are being guided. You are not abandoned. You are being prepared. And when the blessing comes, you will understand why the isolation was necessary. Because isolation is not rejection. It is God's redirection toward a higher purpose. Solitude becomes the training ground where faith is tested and strengthened. There is something about being alone that forces us to confront what we truly believe. When everything around us is stripped away, when the voices we usually depend on are quiet, and when the distractions we lean on for comfort are gone, we come face to face with the strength of our own faith. It is in solitude that faith is not only revealed but refined, because real faith cannot grow in convenience. It grows in challenge. It grows when you are tested, when you feel the weight of uncertainty, and when you have no one else to lean on but God. In the silence of solitude, the noise of doubt gets louder, and that is where faith must rise up and answer. Questions like, will God really come through for me? Does he truly see me? Can I trust him with my future? Begin to echo in your heart. These questions are not signs of weakness. They are invitations to deepen your trust. Because faith is not the absence of questions. It is the decision to hold onto God's promises even when questions remain unanswered. And solitude is the space where you learn to make that decision again and again until your faith becomes unshakable. Think about how solitude forces you to rely less on the opinions of others and more on the word spoken over your life. When you no longer have the comfort of constant reassurance, you learn to stand on assurance that does not come from people. You begin to recognize that faith is not built on what you can see, but on what you believe even when you cannot see it. And that shift is powerful because it means your faith is no longer fragile or dependent on circumstances. It becomes anchored in something far greater. In solitude, patience is tested, and with that testing comes endurance. It is one thing to believe for a blessing when it feels close. It is another to hold on when it feels far away. That gap between promise and fulfillment is where solitude often lives. But it is in that very gap that faith stretches and strengthens. Muscles are not built without resistance, and in the same way, faith is not built without waiting, without tension, without struggle. Solitude provides that resistance. It presses on your faith, demanding that you either break under the pressure or grow stronger because of it. And what happens in those hidden moments of solitude often becomes the foundation for your public victories. People may see your success, your breakthroughs, and your blessings, but they do not always see the seasons of solitude that built the faith necessary to carry them. They do not see the nights you wrestled with doubt but chose to believe anyway. They do not hear the prayers whispered in loneliness, the tears shed in silence, the moments when giving up seemed easier but you chose to keep holding on. Solitude doesn't just test your faith, it proves it. It shows you, and everyone around you, that your faith is not shallow or temporary, but deep and enduring. It's also in solitude that you begin to hear God more clearly. When everything else is quiet, the whispers of his direction become unmistakable. Faith grows because you learn to depend on his voice above all others. And once you have trained your spirit to recognize his voice in solitude, you will not be shaken when you step back into the noise of the world. That is why solitude is a training ground. It is not meant to harm you. It is meant to prepare you, to sharpen you, and to strengthen you for the journey ahead. So the next time you find yourself in solitude, don't see it as abandonment. See it as preparation. See it as a season where your faith is being stretched, where your trust is being deepened, and where your spirit is being fortified. Because it is in those hidden seasons of solitude that you are transformed into someone who can carry the weight of greater blessings without collapsing under them. Solitude becomes the training ground where faith is tested and strengthened. Separation from people often means deeper connection with God's voice. It is one of the hardest lessons to accept because we are created to value relationships, to find comfort in community, and to lean on the people around us. But there are moments in life when those very connections begin to fade away, when the people you thought would always be there suddenly distance themselves, or when you realize that certain voices that once guided you are no longer available. At first, this can feel painful, even unfair. You might ask yourself, why am I losing the support I thought I needed? Why do I feel so disconnected from everyone around me? Yet often, what looks like separation from people is really an invitation to hear God more clearly than ever before. People's voices can be loud. Their opinions, expectations, and advice can shape us. sometimes in ways that draw us closer to our purpose, but other times in ways that pull us away from it. When God desires to speak to you directly, He will often quiet the noise around you. That quieting can come through separation. It is not that people are bad or that their voices are unnecessary, but sometimes their presence becomes so dominant that you no longer make space for God's whisper. Separation then becomes the way He clears the stage so that His voice is the one that takes center place in your life. Think about the moments when you were most desperate for direction. In the middle of confusion, in the middle of heartbreak, in the middle of uncertainty, you may have reached out to people for answers. Sometimes they gave you comfort, but other times their words only deepened your questions. And yet, in the stillness that follows separation, there is a clarity that begins to surface. God's voice does not always thunder. It often whispers. And in order for a whisper to be heard, the room must be quiet. Separation quiets the room. This doesn't mean God wants you to live in isolation forever, but it does mean He values uninterrupted time with you. Just as you cannot truly hear someone if everyone else around is speaking at once, you cannot always discern God's direction when too many voices are influencing your choices. By pulling you aside, He teaches you to lean less on what others think and more on what He has already spoken. In that place, you discover that His guidance is far more steady than the shifting opinions of people. Separation also reveals where your trust has been placed. Have you been depending too heavily on the approval of others? Have you been measuring your worth through human validation? When people are removed from the equation, you come face with the truth. God's approval is all you need. His voice carries more weight than applause, more wisdom than advice, more power than affirmation. And once you begin to walk in that awareness, you find a freedom that no human connection could ever provide. What feels like a loss in the moment is often a divine safeguard. Some voices were never meant to guide your destiny. Some relationships, though meaningful, could not carry the vision God placed inside of you. Separation removes those weights, not because they were inherently wrong, but because they could have hindered you from hearing the full instruction God intends for you. It is in those moments of being set apart that you begin to notice subtle nudges, gentle promptings, and powerful convictions that you may have overlooked if you were still surrounded by noise. And here is the beauty of it. Once you learn to hear God's voice in separation, you will recognize it everywhere. His voice will become familiar in the chaos, trusted in the storm, and undeniable in the silence. You will no longer feel desperate for constant human reassurance, because you will know that the one who speaks to you in solitude will never leave you or mislead you. So if you find yourself in a season where people have walked away, or where relationships feel strained, do not despair. Look beyond the separation and ask what God might be saying in the silence, because more often than not, what feels like disconnection from people is actually preparation for a deeper, more intimate connection with Him. Separation from people often means deeper connection with God's voice. In hidden seasons, God is shaping character for blessings that require maturity. There is a reason why not every blessing arrives the moment we ask for it. Some doors stay closed, not because we are unworthy, but because we are unready. Blessings carry weight, and if our character is not strong enough to hold them, what was meant to lift us up could instead crush us. That is why God allows hidden seasons, times when it feels like nothing is moving, nothing is changing, and nothing is working out. Those are the moments when He is doing His deepest work, not in what people can see, but in the unseen places of your heart. It is easy to desire blessings, but blessings are not just gifts. They are responsibilities. A bigger opportunity requires a stronger foundation. A greater influence requires deeper humility. A higher level of favor requires the wisdom to handle it well. Without maturity, blessings can slip through our fingers as quickly as they came. And so, in hidden seasons, when the world isn't applauding and no one seems to notice your growth, God is building in you the strength, patience, and integrity to carry what is coming. Think about the quiet lessons learned in obscurity. It is in those private struggles where patience is stretched. It is in those moments of delay where humility is refined. It is in the waiting where endurance is formed. The hidden season is not wasted. It is where character becomes unshakable. And when the time comes for the blessing to be revealed, you will not be fragile or unprepared. You will be steady because you were shaped in silence. We often resist these hidden times because they feel like setbacks. But what if the very silence you are resisting is actually saving you? If every blessing came prematurely, we would risk losing them as quickly as they arrived. A seed planted in shallow soil may sprout quickly, but it cannot endure because its roots have not gone deep enough. The same is true for us. Blessings without character are short-lived, but blessings carried on the shoulders of maturity last. Hidden seasons are where God allows your roots to go deep before He lets your fruit be seen. Sometimes this shaping comes through tests that feel uncomfortable. Maybe doors keep closing despite your efforts. Maybe people misunderstand you or underestimate you. Maybe your progress seems delayed while others move ahead. These are not punishments. They are chisels. Each disappointment, each closed door, each lonely night is part of the sculpting process, removing pride, shaping resilience, and teaching you dependence. Maturity is rarely built in comfort. It is built in challenge. And though the process is difficult, it is also necessary because the blessing God has prepared for you is too valuable to be placed in unprepared hands. When the season is hidden, you learn how to stand on faith instead of recognition. You learn how to pray with consistency, even when no one is applauding. You learn how to trust God's timing instead of forcing your own. These are the lessons that make you ready, not just to receive blessings, but to sustain them. Because sustaining a blessing requires more than desire. It requires wisdom, patience, and humility, all of which are forged in the unseen moments of life. And the beauty of this process is that when the blessing finally comes, you will not just celebrate the gift. You will honor the growth that allowed you to carry it. You will understand that the blessing did not define you. It revealed the maturity that was already inside of you. You will handle it differently, with gratitude instead of entitlement, with stewardship instead of carelessness, with humility instead of pride. That transformation does not happen on stages or in crowds. It happens in hidden seasons, when God is quietly shaping your character for something greater than you can yet imagine. In hidden seasons, God is shaping character for blessings that require maturity. What feels like loneliness is actually divine preparation for destiny. There are seasons in life when the silence of loneliness presses in so heavily that it feels unbearable. You look around and wonder why the people you thought would be with you are no longer near. You feel cut off, unseen, and sometimes even forgotten. But loneliness, as painful as it feels, is not always what it seems. Often, it is the place where God does His most powerful work. It is not punishment, it is preparation. It is not abandonment, it is alignment. In that space of solitude, God is preparing you for the destiny He has already written for your life. Loneliness strips away the layers we often use to hide our fears and insecurities. When you are surrounded by people, it is easy to mask what you are struggling with. But when you are alone, the real you is revealed. That is not meant to discourage you. It is meant to heal you. God allows you to face yourself in those lonely moments, not to shame you, but to shape you. He reveals where your trust has been misplaced, where your faith has been shallow, and where your heart needs to be refined. The work He does in the silence of loneliness is the foundation for the strength you will need to carry your destiny. Destiny is not built on comfort. It is built on endurance, and endurance is cultivated in the times when you feel most alone, when no one else is clapping for you, when no one else is affirming you, when no one else is cheering you on. That is when you learn to depend on God's approval instead of human applause. That dependence is what equips you to walk boldly into your future, because you know that if He is with you, it does not matter who is not. The loneliness you feel is not meant to weaken you. It is meant to toughen your spirit for the path ahead. Sometimes loneliness is simply God's way of removing distractions. When too many voices surround you, it becomes difficult to discern which direction is right. But in loneliness, clarity emerges. You begin to hear the subtle whispers of guidance that were once drowned out by noise. That guidance is not just for the present, it is for your future. The instructions you receive in lonely seasons are the very blueprints for the destiny He has designed for you. What feels like silence is actually God's way of speaking in a clearer, deeper way. And here is the truth. The people who walk away during your lonely seasons were never meant to carry your destiny anyway. Sometimes God allows separation because He knows certain people would limit the growth He is calling you into. Destiny is not a group project. It is an individual calling. While others can support you along the way, there are parts of the journey you must walk alone. Not because God wants you to suffer, but because He wants you to be strong enough to stand when the blessing finally comes. It is in those lonely moments that faith grows roots. You stop relying on external comfort and start leaning into eternal promises. You begin to realize that what you thought was emptiness is actually the space where God is filling you with vision, resilience, and strength. Every tear you cry in loneliness is watering the soil of your destiny. Every silent prayer, every sleepless night, every moment of wondering why is shaping you into someone who will not just walk into blessing, but who will have the maturity to sustain it. So the next time loneliness creeps in and whispers that you have been forgotten, remind yourself that you are not forgotten. You are being formed. You are being molded in the quiet so that when the spotlight comes, you will not crumble under it. You are being strengthened in private so you can stand firmly in public. The loneliness that feels so heavy right now is the very tool God is using to prepare you for the destiny He created you for. What feels like loneliness is actually divine preparation for destiny. Isolation is the bridge between your current struggle and your future breakthrough. It is the uncomfortable middle ground that no one wants to walk through, but everyone must face at some point. Struggle on its own can feel overwhelming, and breakthrough on its own sounds exciting. But isolation is the passage that connects the two. It is the place where transformation happens, where old versions of you are stripped away, and a new strength is built within you. Without isolation, the struggle might consume you. Without isolation, the breakthrough might arrive before you are ready to handle it. That is why this bridge, though difficult, is absolutely necessary. When you are in isolation, it feels as though time slows down. The weight of your struggle becomes clearer because there are fewer distractions. You cannot hide from it. You cannot mask it with busy schedules or the presence of people. It is just you, the struggle, and the silence. And in that silence, something begins to shift. The struggle that once felt like it would destroy you becomes the very material God uses to strengthen you. Isolation gives you room to see the struggle differently, to process it in ways you couldn't when you were surrounded by noise. It is on that bridge where perspective changes, and perspective is often the first step toward breakthrough. Every bridge requires you to leave one side behind in order to cross to the other. In the same way, isolation forces you to leave behind old habits, old patterns, and sometimes even old relationships that cannot go with you into the future. It is a place of pruning, and pruning never feels pleasant. Yet it is through pruning that growth becomes possible. The things you release in isolation are not losses. They are weights you were never meant to carry into your breakthrough. They may have been useful for a season, but they are not meant for the season ahead. The beauty of isolation is that it does not just connect you to breakthrough, it prepares you for it. Many people pray for blessings, but are not prepared to handle them. They desire success, but do not yet have the discipline to sustain it. They want influence, but lack the maturity to steward it well. Isolation becomes the training ground, the refining fire, the hidden workshop where your character is shaped. It builds endurance, sharpens focus, and strengthens faith so that when breakthrough finally arrives, you are ready not just to step into it, but to thrive in it. Think of isolation as the narrow passageway that leads to a wide, open space. The struggle behind you may feel heavy, but the breakthrough ahead is worth it. And though the bridge may feel lonely, it is on that very path that God walks closest with you. When others step back, he steps in. When voices go silent, his whisper becomes louder. That companionship is what sustains you on the bridge, reminding you that you are not abandoned but guided. It is also important to recognize that isolation is temporary. No bridge lasts forever. It is a path, not a permanent dwelling place. You may feel like the struggle has locked you in and the breakthrough is too far away, but the truth is, every step you take in faith on that bridge is bringing you closer to what has been prepared for you. The length of the journey may vary, but the destination is secure. Breakthrough always comes to those who endure the bridge of isolation. So instead of despising isolation, learn to see it as a divine passage. See it as the sacred space where your struggle is being transformed into strength, where your pain is being reshaped into purpose, and where your questions are being answered with clarity. Isolation may not feel like progress, but it is the very thing positioning you for your next season. When you look back one day, you will not curse the bridge, you will thank God for it, because without it, you could not have moved from where you were to where you were always meant to be. Isolation is the bridge between your current struggle and your future breakthrough. You may feel isolated, but remember, it is never rejection, it is preparation. Every hidden season, every moment of solitude, every stretch of loneliness is shaping you for the blessings ahead. Hold on with faith, because your breakthrough is closer than it feels.